I'll kick us off. My name is Paul Naquin. I hear all kinds of things all the time, so I really don't try to correct people, but it is interesting. Ernie said my name 4 times today, and he said it different all 4 times. And so, which I can't really give him a whole lot of grief because I actually cannot say his last name very well either. So we just stick to Ernie and Paul, and it works out. But quick introduction. I run our new technology services practice. I've been with ReSource Pro for 4 days now. And so, but I've been hanging around for about 4 months, so I've been able to meet a lot of people. I've been very impressed with ReSource Pro folks. My background is with large global consultancies, and I can tell you, even compared with those people, the work that this group does is literally second to none. It's very impressive. I've also been very impressed with the clients and the partners that I've met this week. My conversations with you all, like I said, it's been very, very compelling, very impressed. I think it's a great ecosystem, and I'm very proud to be part of it. Speaking of impressive, my 2 co-hosts, Sam and Jason, you guys want to introduce yourself and your company real quick?
Sure. My name is Sam McGuckin. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Yovant, and one of my partners here in the crowd, Paul Manning. We're a systems integration firm. What that means is that we help companies implement all of your favorite systems: Guidewire, Duck Creek, Socotra, and Standa, all the devils that you know.
Excellent. So Jason McHugh, pleasure to be here. Similar to Sam, I'm also an SI. So our company is Propellint. So we're a system integrator in SI. We provide technology services to MGAs, carriers, really helping implement some of the solutions that Sam was talking about. So implementing some of those core solutions, enhancing them, and then we're going to get into it, but some of the maintenance aspects of it as well. The other big thing that my firm does is we do a lot of data migration work as well. So as a book of business moves, or an account moves, my team will get involved with taking that off of the legacy system and moving it onto the new system.
Okay, good. So Ernie kicked off the day talking about sort of the transformation continuum. He talked about the 4 components. There's strategy and selection, there's implementation, maintenance, optimization, and then ops execution. And so we've talked about sort of 1, 2, and 4. We'll swim upstream a little bit and talk about 3, which is maintenance, and specifically sort of the apps maintenance aspect of it. So I'm just going to ask these guys questions, get their input, and again, they can converse. I might sneak in a personal question every once in a while, just so you guys get to know them. Maybe we can start with that. And so, just favorite movie of all time, Sam?
This is tough.
Audience appropriate.
Yeah. All right, so I won't say Catch-22. Saving Private Ryan. How about that?
All right, that's a good one. Jason?
So I like Rocky, right? I know it's a little cheesy, but I always, Sylvester Stallone, he wrote it, he directed most of them, he acted in them. I'm always a big fan of boxing movies and, that Rocky franchise.
All right, I like it. I'll tell you mine, it's probably not on the same level as those 2, but I really like Hangover and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So, and I know there are a lot of you out there who think just like me, but just don't want to admit it. So anyway, Jason, let's talk about on the sort of the strategic aspect of apps maintenance, if you will, and talk a little bit about how you define the role of apps maintenance in the broader life cycle of software or applications.
Yeah, I think I would use some words that people have probably heard. Continuous, iterative, right? Agile. I know there was a session earlier today with rapid deployment, right? So with Chris George from MIS and Terry Stevens from IQ, where they went through a project that was very, very fast. And what I like to tell folks is that's the project life cycle, and it doesn't stop there, right? You got to just sort of keep that moving forward. And for us, it's getting into that sort of continuous rhythm of looking at the day 2 enhancements, right? So a lot of times nowadays with rapid development, you're looking at a minimum viable product, an MVP, or a day 1 solution, because customers want to realize the benefit of their investment as soon as possible, right? They want to get that ROI. But what that does is start to, put together a backlog of stories, a backlog of things that need to be, worked through that maintenance team. So now, not only is it just the ongoing support and production support of that solution, but there's also dovetailing those enhancements in as well.
Yeah. And Sam, what are your thoughts? It feels like a lot of customers underestimate, the complexity, the importance of it once it's implemented, if you will. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so we try to encourage clients to, like Jason said, to do the minimum amount they can, get something live. If you have a backlog of things you want to do, chances are your opinion on those things and their relative importance will change dramatically after you go live and see the other things you want to do. The second thing we try to do is encourage people to think not so much about maintenance, but about adding value to the system. So we create a dashboard that helps our clients see how much of their maintenance dollar is doing what we call below the line work, break fix and regulatory, things that you have to do, true maintenance. And we try to show them how much of that dollar is going above the line, adding a new feature, things like that, so that they have a better sense of where their dollar is going, which then causes them to think about the whole maintenance, which we call business as usual running.
Yep.
We think it helps them see it differently, more positively.
Yeah. But along those same lines, Jason, when you think about how do companies align apps maintenance with their business priorities, business strategies? Like, how do you make that work effectively?
Yeah, no, I mean, sort of just coming off of Sam's answer. I mean, it's not just a technology thing, right? So the way we look at it is, understanding the business partner, right, and really, creating that, connection and making them a stakeholder. The way that we like to try to organize things is, in a more of an agile team approach, right? So you're looking at sprints, but as part of that, you're bringing in the customer, right? They have evolving business needs, right? They've got things that are changing, as well as the ongoing sort of support of the solution. An example I'd give is I've worked with a customer for the last couple of years. We helped them stand up, a new core policy administration system. They purchased a carrier, brought them onto the admin system. So that was a large project. But afterwards, they had huge plans, right? I mean, that was just step one. It was a monoline comp carrier at one state, but they wanted to add, additional writing companies or legal entities. They wanted to add additional states on top of just maintaining, the solution. So to what, Sam was talking about before, it's, continuing to add value to the solution, but balancing it with some of those, technology needs and some of those production support aspect of things.
Like what you said about building a joint team, so you include the customer in the Scrum team, and they're actually actively participating in the features that they want to see implemented. And often it's a skill transfer thing. It helps them take it in-house, so they're less dependent on us over time.
Yeah. Sam, your thoughts on, and this may sound a little bit out of left field, but
Here it comes. There will be a test.
Can good application maintenance be a competitive advantage for clients?
Oh yeah, I think the better you are at it, and there's all kinds of techniques that are going to take more time to talk about, but the better you are at it, the more effectively your maintenance dollar goes above the line and adds value. You can introduce coverage change, form change, add new lines of business, and so that is the competitive advantage. Everybody else is worrying about technical debt and break fix and some cyber attack or something. You want to be spending your time and effort above the line.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I mean, I always call it like the foundation, right? So if you don't have a solid foundation, it's hard to do that next project, right? It's hard to, sort of plug in some new enhancement, new state, new form, new coverage, whatever it might be. But, to Sam's point, I mean, if you've got a solid, well-maintained solution, it makes those other projects easier, speed to market, faster, cheaper, so on and so forth.
And then just real quickly, just the whole idea of doing 2-week sprints, people see results.
Correct.
And you have this sort of track record of incrementally delivering value every 2 weeks, and that is so much less painful, I think, to the executive team.
Absolutely.
Some big bang at the end.
So shifting gears a little bit, talking about the people aspect of apps maintenance. Sam, how do you typically how would you typically construct an apps maintenance team, say, versus an implementation team or whatnot?
So context is important. If we were doing the implementation, let's say the first line of business, you put it up, and we're now going to transition into sort of a business as usual mode. Depending on what the client's objectives are, they might say, you guys handle this, or they might say, please skill up my team. I want to be able to do this.
Right.
So we would then take a part of our implementation team, put them in the BAU business, insert some of the client's team members in there, and then leave the original team and maybe even augment it to move on to another line of business or another project. Maybe it's implementing claims instead of a policy system. But we would keep the implementation team going and then start to feed into a business as usual team.
Yeah.
Again, everybody's different. A lot of companies, a lot of our clients will say, just handle it. But more and more, I think, they want more control, particularly on the business analyst side. They want analysts that understand how to make rate changes, form changes, rule changes easily. If they've got to do some integration work, they'll hand that off to us.
And we see the same thing. I mean, especially nowadays, a lot of these vendor packages are so configurable that our team might take the lead and do a lot of the initial development. But as you get into subsequent phase, or maybe even the first phase, but you're really plugging in the customer. They're seeing what you're doing, and you're doing some level of on the job training, right? So they walk away and they understand how to make those changes, how to add forms, endorsements, change rates, whatever it might be. But
I was going to ask Jason along the same lines, like how do you keep the maintenance team or people working on the maintenance side of things engaged and motivated? Because a lot of times it's not as attractive or sexy as doing the implementation work or some other stuff, right? It's like a knuckle dragger stuff at times.
Yeah, I mean, maintenance, it's not as cool, it's not as sexy, but I mean, the way I try to, tell to my folks and everyone is, it's critical, right? I mean, if you don't have a well-maintained application or it's going down, what does that mean for your business, right? I mean, I know we've got a lot of MGAs carriers in the audience, right? If your quoting system is down, if your submission system's down, I mean, you're out of business almost for the most part. So, I really try to stress with my team, the criticality of that role and the importance of it, right? So they fully understand. And then, I mean, the other thing is just investment in people, right? As much as there's, technology out there, I really try to, focus on the individuals and building the right culture, right? The right culture within, our firm, but as well as, transitioning that back to the customer. Yeah. It's just a win-win formula.
It's the BAU, the maintenance is a great place to build your skills. So we'll put more junior guys there. They build the skills, and then they graduate into an implementation role. So I think they see it as an opportunity to advance their career.
Yeah.
That's how we think about it.
Okay, personal question number 2. If you weren't working in IT, what dream job would you want to be working?
I would take Eddie's place in Van Halen if they would have me.
That's a good one. Jason?
He's a pretty good guitarist already.
A little bit better than I am.
I mean, I can't tell you that I have the athletic capability, but I mean, growing up, I always wanted to be a baseball player, right? I mean, I'm a big baseball fan. I was having a good conversation with someone at lunch, or a couple guys at lunch. Oh, actually, around the Tropicana field and everything, and sort of the insurance story that goes behind that. But if I had the physical, capabilities, I'd love to be a ball player.
Yeah. All right, good one. Switching gears a little bit again, KPIs and metrics as it relates to apps management. A lot of folks here are users, and you always hear that the IT guys report, green metrics, and the users are not happy, if you will. Your thoughts, both you guys, your thoughts on sort of key metrics, things that sort of cut past the surface that you've seen successful?
Well, we think about, what does the executive team want to see? Whoever's spending the money on the maintenance, they're going to want to see. And so we again, as I said earlier, we try to think about how much of your investment is going below the line to break fix work or regulatory maintenance, and how much is advancing the ball. We spend a lot of time thinking about that. We also track tickets, inbound tickets, from the L1, that sort of thing. We track them and try to help the client see that some of the tickets are just a misunderstanding of how the system works, and so training is indicated. Or some of the tickets are maybe in the vendor platform, and we need to go talk to the vendor themselves. And some of the tickets are actually just, I want it to work differently. Nothing's broken. It's just not the way I want. So the more you can communicate, that sort of categorize things, the more informed they are, the better they can invest their dollars.
Yeah, no, I agree with Sam. I mean, what I tell folks is, I mean, there's lots of different KPIs and measurements out there, right? And you can, I say boil the ocean a lot. You can really boil the ocean with it. But I always tell folks, like, try to get it down to 3 to 5, right? Key, KPIs that you can, truly, measure and manage, right? And then, as you're looking at that, try to find ones that are easily, you can easily calculate, right? It shouldn't be a job, in order to, come up with a formula or have a debate on, what the KPI is. Because in the end, I think Sam's right. You want to be able to publish that, communicate that, and then, naturally, I'm a project manager. I always use like the lessons learned aspect of it, right? Or the post-mortem, using those KPIs to talk about like, what to start, what to stop, what to continue, right? So if you're doing that on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis with some kind of dashboard, you can really have a good conversation with, the different stakeholders, not just technology, but, the business stakeholders, vendors, whatever it might be.
And you triggered me to think about those retrospectives.
Yeah.
After you do a sprint, it's not so much a KPI as it is a opportunity to look back and say, what could we do better? And so you're continuously improving your business as usual approach. I think that's every bit as important as the KPIs.
It is, and I mean, it's one of the things that we love in the sort of the agile world is like, hey, just because we're doing it today, it doesn't mean we're going to do it in the next sprint, right? So you constantly are refining that approach with the internal team as well as your business partners.
Yeah. So maybe along the lines of sort of kind of things that feed into the KPIs and metrics. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the methodologies, some processes like formality you use around? Or in the app space?
Yeah, so
space.
Just as an observation, I think if I asked anybody at any client, what methodology do you follow to, work on systems that go agile? And then if you ask the same group of people to describe agile, you'd get, a room full of different answers. And I think we're probably as guilty of that as anybody. But the way we think about it is because we're a service provider, we're not actually building solutions for ourselves. You have to modify it a little bit, but we run a pretty formalized agile methodology. After we come in and blueprint a client's requirements, we'll then lay those user stories out over a series of sprints and set their expectation for time and cost, and then we manage to that, right? And so in 2-week increments or maybe 3, whatever is right given the context. Mm-hmm. You can then see incremental progress, and everybody can figure out, okay, do we have a problem early, way early? And then through those retrospectives, which is essentially looking backwards at the sprint and saying what went right and what went wrong, you fine-tune the process. It's very transparent. Everybody sees it. Everybody's happy, right? Yeah. They can see if there's going to be a cost problem. By the way, one thing, this is selfish for a service provider. If you do a waterfall type project, it's only at the end that you're over budget and over cost, and that's when everybody's mad and pointing the fingers at each other. If you run an agile thing where you're incrementally delivering, you can catch problems way early. And candidly, one of the biggest problems we have is, the old joke that where they say, "You guys start coding, I'll go see what they want." The inability to get the requirement written down where it's actionable is a big challenge for us.
And it's funny, I mean, just backing up, I was going to say, I think you stole my methodology slides, right?
I did. I looked at them on the way here, Jason. They're very good, by the way.
But we have a very similar methodology, right? It's agile based, but, we always start off with what we call like a sprint 0. right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the only sprint where it might not be, well, we do 3-week sprints typically, but, and that's where we, really work to define the requirements, build the backlog of stories, and then off of that sprint 0, we're able to get a good projection of, how many sprints do we need to work through, what that end deliverable looks like. But again, back to 2 to 3 week sprints, having daily stand-ups, doing those, retrospectives in the end, it works.
I think one of the, I've been doing this a long time. I'm 29 years old, and so when we used to do these things, there was a lot more stress in the project. Now these
Agreed.
incremental sprints, it defuses things, and you correct things very quickly, and there's less finger pointing and more acknowledgement that we need to make a change. And so overall projects are much more pleasant.
I agree with that as well. I mean, I've been doing this for about 25 years, so I'm a little older than 29. But but I've definitely seen some of that shift, especially, again, 2.5 decades ago, there was a lot more just waterfall projects, right? So there's definitely been a shift.
Over the last couple of days, you've heard a lot about AI, and not just the last couple of days, but in general. And I'm just curious, I assume you guys get it from your clients. Share a little bit of perspective of AI, maybe sort of automation, which a lot of people are calling AI, but share how that impacts your apps management space or your approach to it, maybe some examples of things you've seen or done with clients in the AI space.
Well, we think about it all the time, how to use it. We think about it in 2 contexts. One is how could it help us with implementations, which is, an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'll give you an example. Because we work on the same systems for so many different clients, if we see a defect at this client, chances are we're going to see it. In fact, 80% of them we see at another client later. So we end up. So there's some opportunity, I think, to use AI to analyze production databases, and there's some security that we need to deal with. But we can anticipate defects and remediation of those defects using AI. That's probably not the most impactful use of AI because you would think more in line in the intake cycle for a carrier. That is a great opportunity. A lot of people are asking about us. We are working on some partnerships, to pilot it.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Well, I mean, there's 2 things. I mean, you mentioned automation, right? And I think testing automation is still a big thing, right? My view is not as much during the implementation, but as post production, right? So I know a lot of folks like to get involved early with automating testing. And to me, there's a lot of change that's still happening through those larger, implementation projects, and you're constantly maintaining those test beds. So, we look at, trying to, create automation as part of production support, right, when things are stabilized. But a fun AI story that I just had was we had a little project with a customer who had a legacy solution where they had template files and data files, and they had to sort of come together, and they would be stored as one file in the new solution. So I worked with one of my developers, and he gave me a quote, 60 to 80 hours, Jay, right? We got to build a little program that, converts and puts this stuff together. I had another developer say, hey, give me a minute. He walked away, spent that evening, threw it through ChatGPT, and within 2 hours, he pretty much had this shell of this conversion program. I mean, it was amazing. And now, it didn't handle all the edge cases as we were starting to convert documents through it. I mean, there's little things that we needed to tweak, but within the in a matter of hours, he had this conversion program where another developer said, "Hey, I need a week and a half to develop it." So it's real, right? Yeah. I mean, it can be used. It does not replace humans, right? I know we've heard that a couple of times over the last couple of days, but it is definitely a tool that should aid us from a technology professional perspective.
I was talking to a group of University of South Carolina students talking about our business, and they were asking about AI, and I just sort of in a tangential way mentioned, that when you go out on Facebook and you say, oh, I really got polluted last week and I'm amazed I was able to drive home, that the carrier is seeing that, right? And the shocked look on their face. I said, you don't even need AI for that, but AI's coming.
Yeah, so continuing on maybe with AI, maybe not, maybe there's some other aspects of it, but if you sort of wrap some stuff up for us. But if you project out 3 to 5 years and you look at sort of the apps maintenance space, like what do you see? How do things change 5 years from now?
For me, the biggest change that I see going on right now, you and I talked about this the other day, is sort of the low-code class of systems are really native cloud. Policy systems developed natively in the cloud. They don't have the same maintenance tail that these on-premise or even sort of retrofitted into the cloud systems. I don't want to mention names. That's not really the point. It's just that we make a lot of money migrating on-premise systems as each new release comes out, eliminating technical debt, getting them across, version boundaries, all kinds of things. The cloud systems aren't there. Now, they're functionally less rich than the on-premise systems, but they're both going, towards the middle.
Yeah.
One's trying to get more function, the other one's trying to get more cloud native. And I think that we will still have the need for business as usual support, but it'll be more thoughtful. It'll be, get me in, I want to do Florida takeout business, or I want to write comp in 50 states, not 10 states. It'll be adding value. That's what we'll do versus removing technical debt so you can version up.
Yeah, I mean, I agree a lot with what Sam said. I mean, I think, from an industry perspective, we're going to expect, compliance was the subject beforehand. So, there's going to be a lot more, regulatory changes, compliance changes that we have to monitor and manage and work into the solutions. We know technology is moving, extremely fast. So it's going to be a balance of, meeting business demands, keeping things, compliant, as well as, integrating some of these new solutions that are out there. I mean, more and more carriers are looking at AI, utilizing AI. We're seeing that. So I think that will be the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. Great. Last personal question, and then we're done.
Brace.
Taylor Swift or Miley Cyrus?
Oh, so I'll answer this one. Miley Cyrus, right? And it's funny because every time a Miley Cyrus song comes on, I don't know why. Like my wife goes, "That's your girl," and I'm like, so I have no idea why. But
she's thinking of flowers every time that song comes on about you.
And my kids hate that song, by the way. They're like, "Dad, what are you doing?"
We have a classic rock band. Of course we do, because there are 3 of us on the wrong side of 50. And there's one young lady that fronts the band. It's about 28, and her side gig is a Taylor Swift tribute band.
Wow.
So she's always trying to get us to play a Taylor Swift song. And I say, it's not a good look for us.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's it for us. Thanks.
Thank you.